I would say, you know, the whole resilience stuff came when really came to me when I figured out that I wasn't bouncing back from a lot of the stuff in the way that I wanted to and the way that I felt I should be. I mean, I kind of tried to steer away from a lot of shoulds and things that, you know, I must be doing. When I was working as a journalist, I was in a really competitive newspaper, and it was really intense. And I wasn't kind of giving myself a break. I was being very hard on myself. It was super pressured. I had all these standards and expectations I was trying to live up to as a man in that place, trying to compete with old boys clubs and all these different things. And that's the masculinity side, and the racial side of it was just consistently being overlooked, undermined, and just definitely having a lack of trust in me being you know, a journalist. Like, you know, you have a certain level of autonomy as a journalist. You want to be able to go out and find the stories and kind of come back and be trusted that you're going to go and find the good ones and do all that stuff. But when you're consistently second guessed and all of that stuff, it really plays with your kind of your self-esteem and, you know, your own self-assessment. And so I was really stressed. I was really stressed in that place, and I had my first breakdown when I was at work, and I think I had 2 more after that. And I found that I wasn't bouncing back. My nervous system was really shot. I was anxious, I was jittery, I was nervous all the time. And I decided to go to therapy. And when I started going to therapy, I unpacked a whole load of different things, from conversations around masculinity and sexuality, to racism, to self-love, self-compassion, and all of that stuff was really just pouring out and kind of like really getting into all of this, into this space. And in those conversations, I realized that I wasn't showing up, I wasn't being authentic, I wasn't showing up for myself, I wasn't trusting myself. And I think that's kind of where the emotional resilience really came in, understanding what my responses are rather than my reactions, really figuring out and unpacking the stuff, the trauma small t experiences that I had growing up, and little things that kind of remained with me and stuck with me that I thought I had moved past, which I had moved past, but I hadn't moved through them. I hadn't dealt with any of the stuff. I kind of parted it aside and just kind of like just went through, but I didn't kind of, you know, really challenge what was going on and how that really dealt with my perception of things. So I started doing that, and then I started like looking around, and I started thinking, I'm not the only one that's going through this, because I've got loads of male friends who just are going through all of this themselves, but none of them are taking the personal kind of assessment to A, talk about what's going on, B, go to therapy, and C, it's just they're suffering in all of this. And then all the data was coming out about, suicide being the largest killer of men under the age of 45, and then 3/4 of suicides are done by men, and 10 times, like men, black men in particular, 10 times more likely to be diagnosed with a major psychotic illness, and get kind of arrested under the Mental Health Act, and all of this stuff. And all of this stuff was just pouring at me. I was like, what is going on? It's just all this relentless data, and it doesn't seem like anybody's taking it seriously.
An area a lot of guys potentially don't really address. A lot of them aren't very emotional. A lot of them certainly don't think about their emotions a lot.
They're very emotional. A lot of men are very emotional. Very.
But they don't necessarily know how to convey it. Perhaps maybe
they don't know how to convey it. But you get something wrong at work. Or you miss a deadline, or or it's something, or because men aren't used to actually dealing with their emotions like adults.
Yeah, that's it.
When a man snaps, it's usually chaos.
Yeah.
For like a lot of people, men are hugely emotional. It's just figuring out how to regulate it.
Yeah.
And be comfortable with those emotions too.
Yeah, and I guess a lot of that depends on honesty as well, right? Does that depend on people you work with, particularly getting them to be honest and feel what they feel. A lot of guys maybe want to mask things. What would you say to that?
I inspire a kind of a community of trust and understanding to just kind of sit there and be like, all right, cool. So, you know, with vulnerability, for example, you have to be able to give something in order for you to kind of create the space. Like, it's like bringing something to the table. It's like you've got a very blank table, you and this other person are sitting at it, there's nothing on it, and you're not communicating by words, but you put something on there and you kind of put it forward. They look at that and they say, okay, you've got that, I've got this, and we can bring this together. And you know what I mean? That's pretty much how vulnerability works. There's a risk, but the risk is obviously you put something there and somebody throws it off. That is the risk of vulnerability, and but then it's about how I respond to that. Am I like, you know, but we all have those feelings of rejection, we all have those feelings of neglect and abandonment and all of that stuff. We have that, but how do we navigate through?
I know you've spoken a lot about real man myths in the past, and in your book you deal in a lot of real man myths, don't you? So what would you say they are, and are they dangerous in any way? Are they stereotypes which men feel like they may have to live up to as a standard, perhaps?
So the real men myths, as I said earlier about the myth of patriarchy, the biggest myth is masculinity and patriarchy there itself. But there are some myths that I put in the book are super interesting, because I had a whole list of, the list was very long before. And obviously I had to wheel it down, because, you know, a book has word counts and you can't just be writing everything. So I sat down and I thought to myself, what are some of the things that I've been told about myself, or so what were some of the beliefs I had about myself as a boy, and then had built upon those beliefs as I became a man. And then what is becoming a man, and all of this different stuff. So, you know, I get really philosophical sometimes. I'm just like, what is becoming a man? What is this thing that we are, this vessel? This is how I show up in the world and what I look like. So one of the real, like, I don't know how long we have, but I can run through the myths. I've got 6 here.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
So it starts off with real men don't doubt themselves, and that is one of the biggest myths, because I've never seen a man who doesn't doubt himself. I've never seen a man who doesn't feel insecure about the way he looks, the presentation he did, the girl he likes, the guy he likes, the person he likes, doesn't doubt his ability as a father, doesn't doubt his ability as a student. You know what I mean? I've never met anybody that does that. These are real human things. We have doubts. These are things that happen. The over-assured person sometimes is what is glorified as a man. You want to be that guy who's just kind of like, yeah, I'm that person. I know what I'm doing. I'm just da 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 da. And then they get knocked off a pedestal and they have a tantrum because it's embarrassing. And then, you know, men don't like to be humiliated. So there's that. The second myth was real men are fearless go-getters. The myth here is real men are fearless go-getters. Now, anyone can be a fearless go-getter, can do what they want, can just run through and not have to care about anything and really do all that. But if but guys care about stuff. You're not just gonna just run through something and like not have a clue about what's going on. You know what I mean? Like it's just looking at these kind of myths and these things, you know, just go for it and just do it and just and you're like, no. Sometimes you care too much. Sometimes you do care about the outcome. You do care about the people involved. You do need to figure out how you feel about that situation. Are you compassionate to yourself and all of that stuff? There's real men don't cry, which says what it says. Real men have no worries about their bodies. Again, that's back to the insecurity piece. Real men never fail. Again, well, like, you know, look at Boris Johnson. Real men are lone wolves. You know, wolves travel in a pack. So the idea of a lone wolf doesn't really make much sense. So it's kind of like it's looking at those things. The lone wolves bit is really about like friendship and vulnerability and relationships, because it's like, you know, a lot of men are kind of really die to be a part of the group. they want to be a part of the football team. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, I want to go to the football team so bad. It's just the place that I want to be. I just want to be the guy is in there. And then they go there and they're like, if they're not, you know, if they're trying to enter into a new group, it's like you've got to have all this kind of ritualization, or you get hazed or banter and all this different stuff. And you're in this space, and you're just like, we're humans. We want to be in community with one another.